토요일 날 아침 4시 45분이 됐습니다. 아침 리딩을 좀 시작하겠습니다. 뉴욕타임즈 19일자 January 19th, 2024 어제 날짜 뉴욕타임즈의 기사 몇 개를 좀 읽겠습니다. 같이 Culture, How to set up a nostalgic time loop. Critics Notebook, Happy Days is now 50, yet its influence can be viewed again and again. Mention Happy Days to TV viewers of a certain age. Raise hands, and the first thing they remember might be not an episode or a scene or a catchphrase, but a lunchbox. I'm specifically thinking of a cool Somos brand one featuring Haley Winkler as the show's pop Panon greaser, Arthur, aka Fonzie, aka the Fonz, which luckier 70s kids. Then I got to schlep their PBJs to school in, and which is now in the collection of the Smithsonian. To remember Happy Days is to remember your youth, which was also the function of Happy Days when it premiered on January 15, 1974. Well, at least it sort of was. Ostensibly, the show appealed to grown-ups who were young during its time period, roughly the mid-50s to mid-60s, over 11 seasons, but some of its most ardent fans were the lunchbox totters, toddling down someone else's memory lane. Now Happy Days is 50 years old, or is it? Time gets fuzzy when you enter the Happy Days verse. In some ways, the series never ends. It was just handed down through the culture like a vintage varsity jacket. It visualized Middle America as a place where everyone was essentially good, where family life was a friendly tussle, not the war. British Library edges back online. On October, cyber attack crippled the institution's presence on the web. The British Library this week began restoring its online catalog, which holds details of books, journals, and music scores, the first step in its recovery from the brazen cyber attack in October, the library said. For the first time since the attack, the majority of critical books, archived, maps, and manuscripts held in the basement and our St. Pancras site will once again be discoverable and usable by your readers. Rowley, the British Library's chief executive, said, referring to its building in central London. The British Library's collection included 2 of the 4 surviving copies of Magna Carta, the world's largest surviving collection of social manuscript and 5 copies of Shakespeare's Post-Polio. With a powerful howl, a singer still inspires. Linda Sharrock's voice continued to resonate despite the pronounced limit. Last April, the Vienna-based avant-garde jazz vocalist Linda Sharrock gave her first New York performance in over 40 years, a sold-out concert at the Howard Gilman Opera House in Brooklyn as a part of a series curated by Solange, appearing between the poet Claudia Rankine and the saxophonist Aki, guided the musician through a fully improvised set while she howled powerfully over the cacophonous score of pre-jazz in a declamatory style that evoked the evening's program titled The Cry of My People. Sharrock became apathic after a stroke in 2009 that paralyzed her right side. She now uses a wheelchair. Our celestial bodies ourselves. Book review. Our moon. How Earth's celestial companion transformed the planet, guided evolution, and made us who we are. The moon is more sibling than subordinate. Boyle right explaining that it formed out of the same cosmic cloud of debris that made the Earth. Its gravity not only stabilized our climate, making the moon captain of our season, but also enabled life. As ruler of the tides, the moon pulled primitive organisms into the Earth's nutrient-rich seas, then pushed them back onto shore, where the fish out of water worked. At times the narrative meanders far enough away from the topic at hand that I wondered, what does this have to do with the moon? But just as it always reappears in our skies, so too does Boyle return to a subject. There is always some connection to be made, whether political, spiritual, intellectual, or mystic. Trump and the new breed of evangelical voters. Those who support him may not be churchgoers. Cultural identity is the key. Karen went to a Lutheran church so regularly as a child that she won a perfect attendance award. As an adult, she taught Sunday school, but these days Ms. Johnson, a 67-year-old counter attendant at a slot machine parlor, no longer goes to church. She still identifies as an evangelical Christian, but she doesn't believe going to church is necessary to commune with God. I have my own little things with the Lord, she said. Ms. Johnson's singing include frequent prayer, she said, as well as the podcast and YouTube channels that discuss politics and what's going on in the world from a right-wing and sometimes Christian worldview. No one plays a more central role in a perspective than Donald J. Trump, the man she believes can defeat the Democrats who she's certain are destroying the country and bound for the hell. Trump is our David and the Goliath. Miss Johnson said recently as she waited outside a hotel in eastern Iowa to hear the former president speak. White evangelical Christian voters have lined up behind the Republican candidates for decades, driving conservative cultural issues into the heart of the party's politics and making nominees and presidents of Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. But no Republican has had a closer or more counter-intuitive relationship with the evangelical than Mr. Trump. In Iowa, these things matter, said Andrew, a spokesman for the DeSantis campaign. But Mr. Trump's track record and the recent polling suggested that it's not certain. In early December, Mr. Trump had a 25-point lead over Mr. DeSantis among evangelical voters, according to a Des Moines Register, NBC News, the Mediacom Iowa poll. What may matter more than endorsement and the policy plans are Mr. Trump's embrace of Christianity as a cultural identity and its promise to defend it. At a recent rally in Waterloo, Iowa, Mr. Trump cast Christians as a broadly persecuted group facing down government weaponized against them. Catholics are the current target of the communist, Marxist, and the fascist, he said, adding that evangelicals will not be far behind. Emptying pews. Ms. Johnson's Sunday morning routine changed well before Mr. Trump arrived on the political scene. In her early 20s, she was married to a man who didn't believe, so she dropped up, going to the building. She didn't lose her faith, but life, including children, and a few moves pulled her in other direction. In this, she was typical. Church membership in the United States has been slipping for decades, along with the share of Americans who identify as Christian and particularly as Protestant, the branch that has historically been the gravitational center of American religion. In the middle of the 20th century, 68% of Americans described themselves as Protestant. By 2022, 34% did, according to Gallup. Of 11% described themselves as simply Christian, a category Gallup did not include until the late 1990s. At first, declines mostly affected the more liberal mainline Protestant denomination, but in recent years, self-identified evangelical church attendance had dropped as well, and a larger share of conservatives than liberals report leaving church. In 2021, for the first time on record, fewer than 50% of Americans were members of a church. It's the largest and the fastest religious shift in our nation's history, said Michael, the former executive pastor of a non-denominational church in Orlando, Florida, and the co-author of the recent book, The Churching. The transformation has been particularly visible in Iowa, where self-identified evangelicals, who make up about a quarter of the state's other population, are influential in Republican politics, but where religious practice had changed more starkly than almost anywhere else in the country. She sees Mr. Trump as a man who believes in God and prays, but the reasons she supports him, she said, are his approaching to the economy and his progress on building a wall along the southern border. The president tried to be a regular Joe on the campaign trail. White House had a memo. Biden goes to Main Street, struggling to create an air of down-home spontaneity. This is quintessential Middle America, even though we are not in the middle of America. It was a quiet day in Emmaus, PA. The only sound on Main Street was the idling engine of the sleek black truck that some called a rolling doomsday communication control center, which was parked outside the bike shop. The men with the guns, dressed all in black, were perched on the roof using binoculars to scan the area for terrorists or other bad guys. The president had to come to this picturesque town of 11,000 to chat with a few local business owners, order a smoothie, and visit a local firehouse. It so happened that his visit produced a few pictures useful for his re-election campaign. All the better. Did he mention the new statistics on startup biddings? No worries, he would be happy to repeat them. But artificial and surreal as it may be, allies have been agitating for Mr. Biden to get on the hustings away from the Beltway and the Situation Room. He has, after all, spent a lifetime working rooms, shaking hands, slapping the arms, squeezing shoulders, kissing babies. His Uncle Joe connection with everyday people, allies that argue, is perhaps his biggest political superpower. This is exactly the kind of area the president should be visiting, said Representative Susan, Democrat of Pennsylvania, who accompanied him to Emmaus last Friday, and whose swing district is rated a toss-up by the Cook Political Report. This is quintessential Middle America, even though we are not in the middle of America. Diabetes propels amputation crisis in South Texas. Poor access to healthcare, genetics, and diet take toll on Latino community. At the medical facility on the west side of the San Antonio, the patients show up with disturbing regularity. Most of them men. They have sores on their feet that won't go away, and they live with the same devastating news. Their diabetes has progressed to the point that legs must be amputated to save their lives. He said he fell in love with the colorful and welcoming Mexican-American culture and the city landmarks like Alamo and Riverwalk. But troubling health patterns became evident to him right away. Even as a young doctor, he knew that Latinos and Native Americans have genes that predispose the pancreas to make the insufficient insulin and other genes that cause tissues to resist. He also knew that San Antonio's much celebrated Tex-Mex cuisine, which often is high in fatty oils and red meat, and include things like flour or the tortillas and the sweet that are high in processed carbohydrate, can wreak havoc on a body. For Hispanics in South Texas, diabetes is the big boogeyman you are always watching out for. One of his recent patients, he said, was a child of about 8. That kind of destroyed me, he said. Ignoring the force's unwritten rules cost an officer his job. A red Mazda sped past. A police officer's unmarked car stationed at a tree-lined intersection in Staten Island, New York. The officer inside, Matthew, clocked the Mazda as well over the speed limit and prepared to make a stop at a nearby street light, but the car blew through a red light. Officer Bianchi turned on his siren. Behind the wheel was a woman in her late teens or early 20s. As the officer Bianchi began to explain why he had stopped her, she handed him a card. The police union distributed the wallet-sized cottage cars, sometimes referred to as get-out-of-jail-free cards, to members, who in turn passed them out to friends and family members. Officer Bianchi had been instructed to let card carriers up without the tickets. By the time he pulled over the Mazda in November 2018, drivers were handing him these cars 6 or 7 times a day. But this woman's car was a little older, a little tattered looking. It was difficult to make out the contact information for the officer who had given it to her, which is usually written on the card's back. So Officer Bianchi did the wrong thing, which is to say the right thing. He wrote the woman a ticket. Give that guy a ticket. Officer Bianchi, 40, had a good memory for details and a weakness for repeating himself. He comes across as a story lead. Sensible, eminently reasonable, and completely obsessive. Inside the traffic unit. Initially, when he joined the traffic unit, the courteous cars didn't bother him. The way they said it to you is, move on. Move on to the next person, he said. Letting this person go is the fine. Last stop. The stop that ended his career in the traffic division was unremarkable. Business Airbus the widening is the lead. Issues of quality shape. European makers' rivalry with America's Boeing. Airbus cemented its position last week as the world's biggest plane maker for the 5th straight year, announcing that it had delivered more aircraft and secured more orders than Boeing in 2023. At the same time, Boeing was trying to address a huge public relation and safety crisis caused by a harrowing near disaster involving its 737 MAX line of airliners. In the long-running duel between two aviation rivals, Airbus had pulled far ahead. The disruption that have been affecting the Boeing MAX have made it seem as a less reliable aircraft to have in your fleet. If you have $40 billion in debt and the plane, that's your cash cow. Cash cow is grounded because the door blew up. It's a sign that management is not investing in the future, but firefighting today, he said. As airlines continue to increase post-pandemic orders for planes to build bigger and newer fleet, Airbus appears to be widening its lead. In 2 huge deals, Air India ordered 250 Airbus planes, and the Indigo, India's biggest carrier, agreed to buy 500. The company reported an order backlog of 8,600 planes in 2023, compared with 5,626 for Boeing. EV owners find colder drains their batteries. In frigid Chicago, drivers shiver while waiting in long lines to recharge their cars. With Chicago facing frigid temperatures, electric vehicles charging stations have become scenes of desperation. Depleted batteries, confrontational drivers, and lines stretching out onto the street. When it's cold like this, cars aren't functioning well, chargers aren't functioning well, and people don't function so well either, said J.B., an Uber driver who said he had done little. In the past 3 days, beside the charges, it rented Chevy Bolt and worried about being stranded with a dead battery again. It ended up being very difficult to make battery electric vehicles work in very cold conditions. Mr. B said you cannot charge a battery as fast or discharge a battery as fast if it's cold. There's no practical way of getting around. Yet Tesla did not respond to a request for a comment. Not in Norway. As people in the industry study what went wrong in Chicago, some suggested that the charging infrastructure may have been simply unmatched by the extreme cold weather. Why do the batteries drain? Unlike cars with internal combustion engine, and electric vehicles has 2 batteries, one low voltage and one high voltage. In particularly cold weather, the lower voltage 12-volt battery can also lose charge as it does in traditional vehicles. Beijing's drive to lift bus rate fails. Natural gas keeps the light on in Texas cold snap. Renewable sources play a part, but the grid leans heavily on fossil fuel. Texas has invested more in wind and solar power than any other state in America in recent years. But during the current cold snap, natural gas has played a key role in keeping the light on. During the past few days, renewable energy was a small but meaningful part of the energy mix that delivered electricity to Texans. But starting on Sunday, as wind chill dipped below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 18 Celsius, in some Texas cities, and the demand surged, especially in morning hours as residents awakened. The grid leaned heavily on gas, according to data from the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the grid operator. Why drug prices are sky high in the U.S. Florida's plan to save money by importing medication from Canada, authorized this month by the Food and Drug Administration, has renewed attention to the cost of prescription drugs in the United States. Research has consistently found that drug prices in America are significantly higher than those in other wealthy countries. In 2018, they were nearly double those in France and Britain, even when accounting for the discounts that can substantially reduce the amounts American health plans and employees pay. Here are 6 reasons drugs in the United States cost so much. No central negotiator, no price controls, perverse incentives, a fragmented system. What the market will bear. Drug industry executives often say their prices reflect the value their products provided to society. For example, a one-time $3 million cure may be a bargain if it ends up averting $10 million in hospital bills and lost wages. But a comparison with other valuable resources shows how that model could send prices spiraling out of control. If we allowed water utilities to charge us the full value of water in our lives, society would very quickly break down, said C, an expert in pharmaceutical law at Columbia University. Drug companies also say the prices of medication reflect the huge rising cost of running clinical trials and the need to recoup expensive investment in failed drugs, but academics have found no relationship between how much drug companies spend on research and how much they charge. The reality, experts say, is that companies set the prices as high as the market will bear. How hot was it last year? So hot that the global average temperature exceeded the level world leaders hoped that we'd stay below until 2100, when climate scientists and advocates talk about the risk of breaching 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, as they have somewhat obsessively, at least since it was established as the ambitious climate goal of the 2015 Paris Agreement, and since the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change described the consequence of exceeding it in its 2018 special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This isn't exactly what they mean. Every time the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change took stock of the state of decarbonization, or the world scientists and energy modelers sketched the implication of a new wave of carbon pledges, or the UN published its emission gas report, or the Climate Action Tracker updated its the CAT thermometer. One baseline of comparison was that 1.5 degree goal. Perhaps the goal was an impossible dream when we first heard about having emission in 12 years, or even back in 2015 in Paris, when marching activists first chanted 1.5 to stay alive. In the lead-up to COP15 in Copenhagen in 2009. A peaceful solution on Taiwan is slipping away. The island's election showed that its people want their freedom, leaving China a few options aside from war to achieve the unification it desires. President Biden had said the United States would help defend Taiwan in the event of an unprovoked attack. But with the U.S. military supplies already constrained by the support provided to Ukraine, American forces could run out of missile after a few weeks of high-intensity combat with China. Washington may also struggle to forge an effective coalition to deter or defeat Chinese invasion of Taiwan if allies put up by U.S. political dysfunction and possibly turn to the America first foreign policy of Donald Trump, hesitate to join in U.S. military preparation or economic sanction. Taiwanese and American political leaders needed to recognize this stark reality, do far more to improve military deterrence, start a national conversation about the growing threat of war, and work toward public unity about how to confront that threat, all while avoiding rhetoric or action that needlessly throw fuel on the fire. If they fail to seize this opportunity, they may not get another chance. Team Biden leader resetted on Israel for a combination of ideological, military, and personal political reason. Mr. Netanyahu probably doesn't want this war to end. And while his demise is not a panacea for progress, nor can it be an explicit U.S. goal. It is nevertheless the prerequisite for creating the condition under which the Palestinian rights can be advanced. The United States can and should distance itself from the Gaza debacle and the extremism of Israel's leaders, with Israel making clear in word and deed its intention to continue down this dangerous path, indifferent to U.S. needs and expectation. Shouldn't Mr. Biden be keeping a greater distance? How the TV industry lost its nerve. At first glance, the result of this year's Emmy Awards, which included wins for Succession as the outstanding drama and The Bear as outstanding comedy, would seem to confirm that quality TV programming is alive and well. But if you look more closely, you'll notice red flags flying, warning us about the future. No matter how much you like the shows that won or were nominated, don't expect another slate this good any time soon. The era of so-called peak TV was kicked off in the late 1990s by The Sopranos. It happened because HBO, looking to disrupt The industry broke rules, took risks, and pushed creative boundaries. Today, beleaguered programming executives are hampered by the cost cutting and cowed by market upheavals. The best shows of the last 2 decades were the product of unusual creativity and incredible risk. Too bad the TV business has left those qualities behind. Take that, America. The Iowa caucuses are over, but we have all of 2024 ahead of us. Well, people, Iowa has spoken. Picked anyhow. Anytime the United States get to select its next president, all eyes turn to Iowa, which traditionally has the first word on what the public wants. This is a state with approximately 1% of the national population. How could we not pay attention? Next week we'll be obsessed with the voting in New Hampshire, which has less than half as many people as Iowa. So go to the current caucus and the primary system. On the Republican side, at least, the Democrats changed theirs after 2020, when the Iowa count crashed and burned. It took days to get the final results, which gave Pitt and Bernie Sanders the lead, followed by Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, who came in at a pathetic 15.8% pop quiz. The Iowa Democrats struggled to produce a voting count because a deep reluctance to let other states start getting all the attention. A bad app, a threat to public safety from 12-foot-tall snow bear. Don't go for the self-absorption option. Be nice. The answer, of course, is a bad app. Truly, in this day and age, virtually anything terrible that occurs is either because of a bad app or Donald Trump. Sometimes it's hard to keep all this in focus. We've got lives to live. Joe Biden has to run the country. Donald Trump has to go to 9 million trials. But hey, it's democracy. It's important, and it's going to be a very long year.